I also really like the connections you draw between birth and death.
Mm,
And you make the connection, the physical connection, that at a certain point of birth, your body takes over. It's not that
right,
you're doing it and you're helping it, but it's kind of
right,
happening to you.
right.
And to talk about death in similar terms, that the
Hmm.
body knows what to do, it has its own process. And you also make connections in terms of preparation. And I really like this from your book. You write, just as we carefully prepare for a birth, so too can we openly and consciously make preparations for dying, and therein provide some comfort and reassurance about what is, after all, a certainty for all of us.
Mm,
And I think that's a really important point. Everybody has birth plans, whether they work or don't work.
right.
It's a way of thinking through that process.
Hmm.
And really, we need to have death plans as well, to some extent.
Yes, I think we do. And just back to that original thought you said about how, the baby knows how to be born. I think it was after I had been at, many deaths probably, where I could be calm enough in my own self to really observe and to watch what's happening and to take in the subtleties of the experience of dying, which is really, it's something to be that close. Many of your listeners, I know, have been very close to that. And there is a point at which I began to realize that there is a deep intelligence of the body to know how to die. And I thought that's a strange thing to say, but as you watch people, it's like there is something, just as the baby knows how to get down that birth canal. There's a moment when we turn into what could be called the death canal, where death is very active. And at that point, there's the same kind of energy that is part of us. It's not something we have to direct at that point, or we have to even be in control of. And I think that surrender is ultimately frightening to people, but I think it's deeply comforting to know that the body is in its own process and that we can trust that. So I really, I find that reassuring, actually, to know that there's, we're wired for that. And the same with grief, actually, that grief is a normal response to a loss. So we're made for that. And we think, oh, how could I possibly, live through this loss of a beloved one? And again, there's an instinct to know how to do that. I mean, it's amazing how people do find their way through. And so back to your question about preparing, I mean, I'm always intrigued how, deliberate people are about birth, aren't they? I mean, we know who's going to look after us, who the experts are, whether it's your family doctor or midwife, and we know where we're going to be. And we do all that prenatal work to prepare emotionally and even spiritually for some people, that you want to be in the right state of mind. You want to be welcoming this baby with joy. And so it's also, of course, there's a mystery to it. We don't know if that's really going to happen. The same with death. But does that mean we shouldn't be prepared just because we don't really know how it will go? And there are people, and many, many people, who think with death, it's just too difficult to imagine making preparations. And, I have people I work with every day who, say, oh, I just can't, I just don't want to think about it. I just don't want to think about it. And I've watched how those deaths go and how the family manages. And I have to say, it makes a huge difference if people have been, say, think about, do I want to die at home? Is that something I could imagine? I was with a family recently, and the girls in their early 20s said, I just don't want mum to die in our family home. And then I can offer some wisdom from other families that actually in the end it can be quite a comforting thought that mum was here through the duration of her life, and died in this room, in this bed. People are frightened of that. So it's worth the conversations early on. And so
Yeah.
then the whole family says, and then to know that, well, if you go to a hospice or a hospital, that's a beautiful option because of the caregivers there. And then you don't have to maybe do so much personal care, depending again on the illness, what's required. So these are very practical things that actually I see create much more fearlessness, because, well, we don't know. I mean, this mystery is the great unknown. So the things that we can make known, why don't we do that, so that you can at least lessen that fear of the mystery
Yeah.
by saying, okay, I've got, and I always say, you need to get a really good team of people who know how to do this, who've made it their life's work. Don't have a team of, perhaps a physician who hasn't spent a lot of time around people who are dying. Get the people who really know, the hospice teams, the people who've made it their life service. So those are the people you want around you if you need help. So those things I think are extremely important. And then I see that people are frightened to talk about after I die. And that preparation work to me is absolutely crucial in how the bereavement process goes. So if the person's absolutely, I don't want to talk about it. I mean, I know people in their 80s and 90s who say, I'm not thinking about, and I don't know what I want. I want a funeral, I'm not sure. And the family at the end of the day, it's a much harder job then, isn't it? To say, well, I wonder what they wanted when they didn't really say what they wanted. And I would say, why don't we relieve as much of a burden on our families as we can? And, I call that our radical acts of love. That's the name of the book, that is a loving thing to do, to take care of your preparations, because it helps your family so much when you know what they want, and that that you're really honoring them. If you're not allowed to honor them because you don't know what their wishes are, you feel really at a loss. And again, it's this deep responsibility you have then to try and honor them without information. So I think it prevents a lot of regret if we can have the courage and just be a little braver to say, well, maybe I'm going to keep hoping that I'm going to have a miracle. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's also, I always say, well, along with that hoping and wishing, which I'm happy to join you on, I think it's fine to hope, because I've seen some things I wouldn't have thought have happened in my career. So, hoping and wishing is, I think, a very important thing. But it's also, what about the what if conversations? And that's often how I say, what if it doesn't go that way? And, could we talk about some of the difficult things that would help us to care for you?